Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article is about digital divide and the judgment passed by the Delhi High Court. Before we understand what this article is all about, let's look into the background. We have the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act. This introduced Article 21A into the Constitution of India. What does it do? It provides free and compulsory education to all the children in India between the age group of 6 up till 14 years of age. This is what introduced in the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act, but this very provision also said that there has to be a law for the implementation of Article 21A. So what does the government do? The government introduces what is called as Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act, which in general is called as the RTE Act of 2009. What is this compulsory education as described under this act? It basically means that the government has an obligation to make sure that every single child within the age group of 6 up till 14 years is provided elementary education without any expenses, without any fees collected by the students. So they should not be collecting the fees from the students, and at the same time they have to ensure compulsory admission, attendance and completion of the elementary education to every child within this particular age group. This is what is the very foundation of the Right to Education Act and the fundamental right as espoused under Article 21A of the Indian Constitution. It also lays some of the norms and standards as to how many students have to be in a particular school, what should be the pupil to the teacher ratio, what should be the building types, the infrastructure, school working hours, teacher working hours. Everything is prescribed under the Right to Education Act of 2009. What is important for us is to understand that this particular Right to Education Act also provides 25% reservation to the weaker sections and also the disadvantaged group. So what does it do? It has a particular provision which makes sure that there is 25% reservation, that which is also provided in unaided private schools when it comes to the weaker sections as well as the disadvantaged group. So what is this disadvantaged group? Basically, you have children belonging to the SC/ST community and you have socially and educationally backward classes, or in case there are people, students coming from certain regions which is economically backward, geographically, linguistically, gender wise biased, then such people are also coming under the group of the disadvantaged groups. Then we also have the provision of weaker sections. What is this weaker sections? Let's say for example, there are parents, there are also guardians who are taking care of their children. If their annual income is less than the minimum amount as prescribed by the government, again such children or students will fall under the weaker sections. So all these students who belong to the weaker sections and the disadvantaged group will be getting the reservation under this 25% quota. Kindly remember, there is an exception as well. This is not applicable to all types of schools. Instead, there are minority schools, both aided as well as the unaided. They do not fall under the purview of this particular act, where reservation will have to be provided by them. We have one of the judgments called as the Pramati judgment, which clearly says that minority schools are exempted from this 25% quota. Why are we discussing all this? That is because the Delhi High Court has recently passed a judgment. It says that in case there is a private educational institution which is employing the digital mode of education, and in such an institution there are weaker sections and disadvantaged groups, if they are part of this educational institute, then such a private institute will have to provide all these students either the mobile phones or any other apparatus, and also provide internet connectivity such that these people do not miss out on the educational platforms. So what we have when it comes to the private educational institutions, we have two types of bifurcation. One, who actually come to that particular school, they are wealthy enough, they would be able to have every type of equipments that is required, they have internet connectivity at home. But there are other set of people, that is the 25%, who are economically weaker and they are the disadvantaged community. They might not have access to the internet, they might not have access to the gadget. So the Delhi High Court here has asked all these private institutions that you, the private institutions, will have to provide gadgets and the data so that they do not miss out on the education from this particular institute. Why is this important? That is because the Delhi High Court currently feels that in case there is any discrimination that is happening between the wealthy and the economically weaker sections, there is a possibility that these tender hearts and souls might actually leave the education as well. They can abandon the education, they might have the feeling of inferiority, and that is when there would be a widening gap between those who have the education and those who do not have the education. So it is requesting the private institutes to make sure that they have to provide all these gadgets and the data as well. We have one of the landmark judgments which is also given by the Supreme Court of India. That is the state of Tamil Nadu and others versus K. Shamsundar and others. What does it say? It says that the right of a child should be extended to have quality education. It is not just about giving education, but what type of education? The quality education has to be provided to every single student within this age group of elementary education. So that has to happen without any discrimination on the basis of child's economic, social, or cultural backgrounds. So what is happening here? There is a clear-cut bifurcation or a division, a discrimination between the one who's wealthy, the one who's not wealthy. So this particular judgment say, irrespective of what the child's background is, there has to be no discrimination, and that is again supported by the Delhi High Court as well. So kindly remember, it is requesting the private institutes to make sure that all you private institutes will have to provide these gadgets and data to the students. Further, the Delhi High Court goes on to say, if this idea is not implemented, it means there would be a violation of Article 14, which is speaking about equality, and it is violating the fundamental right of Article 21A, says this particular article. And at the same time, we also have to remember that there is a particular section in the Right to Education Act. It is speaking about section 12 of 2 of the RTE Act. So what is this section 12 of 2? Let's say, for example, there is a private organization, private educational institute. So they are giving education to economically weaker sections, which is reserved to about 25%. So they are spending some money on the student. So this money will be reimbursed by the government. So what is the Delhi High Court saying? That in case you are providing these gadgets, in case you are providing the data to the economically weaker sections, produce the same documents to the government and get your recompensation, is what the Delhi High Court is speaking about. The only hope right now is that this particular order is actually implemented and the students who are facing this digital divide do not have to face the consequences of digital apartheid, is what we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says country of origin, onus is on the importers. Before we understand what this article is, we have to understand the definitions of what is this country of origin is, what is the rules of origin are, and then understand what the crux of this article all about. First up, let's understand what is this country of origin. Let's say, for example, we have number of gadgets, goods, products that are coming from different country. What would ideally happen? There would be a particular product which might be manufactured in one particular country. Let's say, for example, China. It might be exported, let's say, to another country, and that happens to be Philippines. And now if this particular product reaches India, China would be the country of origin. So what is the country of origin here? It is the place where the item is produced irrespective of the point of shipping. So it does not matter from where it is being delivered to India, but where it was originally manufactured, where it was originally produced, that is called as the country of origin. We also have something called as the rules of origin. What is this rules of origin? They are the criteria needed to determine which product has come from which country. So you cannot haphazardly decide that you require certain framework, guidelines and criteria that will define the source of that particular product. So that rules that is given by a particular country is what is called as the rules of origin. What is the importance of country of origin? Let's say India has a free trade agreement with Asian countries. Let's assume so. So once we have this free trade agreement, all these countries which are part of ASEAN would be able to send their products to India. So India will not impose any type of taxes on them, the duties on them, or even if it is imposing, it will be at a very less rate. But what if there is a country like China which starts sending its product to ASEAN, and from ASEAN it is coming to India? It means that India does not have a free trade agreement with China, but then its products are coming to ASEAN, and through ASEAN countries it is coming to India, which means India is not able to put all the duties and restrictions to the Chinese products. In this particular backdrop, what we actually witness is large number of goods, large number of products which are being dumped into India indirectly from China. How? Let's say for example, there is a gadget, there is a phone, there is another product, or there is a good which is ideally manufactured in China. China is not directly sending it to India. Instead, it sends through another country, and that country exports it to India. So this means that India is not able to impose the duties and restrictions directly, which means India is also suffering as well. India does not know what exactly is happening and the trade statistics with respect to that country. So this means India will be suffering certain losses as well, and it would not be able to restrict that particular country from exporting indirectly. So as a result of which, what India is done currently is that in case there is an importer, let's say I'm an importer, I'm importing certain gadgets from Philippines, or let's say for example Vietnam. So there is a certificate that I have to give to the government of India that this particular product is not from China, but instead it is only from the Asian countries. Or I will also have to say to the government of India, when I'm getting this particular product, that this original product has an add-on which is 35% as well. So it is not directly the original product from China, but there is an add-on to this original product where 35% is added to the original product from China, and that is exported to India. Only when such a certification is given to the customs officials is when my product from another country as an importer will be allowed in India, says this particular article. So what is the significance of this? The government of India has initiated this rule. So now in case there is an importer, only if he has the certificate he would be getting that concessional rate as well. So in case it is not from the Asian countries, it happens to be from China or any other country where India does not have a free trade agreement, he would not be able to get the concessional rate given by the government of India. And with this, we will also have the custom officials who would be able to check any attempted misuse of the duty concessions. Apart from these advantages, we also have to go by the consumer preferences as well. What are these consumer preferences? This will give an idea about the positive or the negative image or the perception of that particular product. Let's say for example, if I have to procure a particular product from a different country, so what do? I see if this particular product is from China, is from Japan, or from United States of America. So I would be able to pick up my product on the basis of country. In case it is from China, I may not pick it up. In case it is from United States of America, I may pick it up. So the consumer's perception about that particular product is also important. So the country or the source of the origin is once again important. It helps in understanding the product quality, the performance of it, the reliability with respect to the product, the prestige and the product characteristics of that particular product. So I would be able to know which country is doing it, and I would also have a clear cut perception about that particular product. And at the same time, we might also look into other aspects as well. Let's say for example the political aspects. Let's say United States of America recently also stopped importing products from the Xinjiang province in China. Why? Because there was abuse of human rights in this particular region. So in case you are a person who respects human rights, you do not want to procure a particular product if there is a violation of human right, you would also want to know the country of origin as well, or in case there is a country which is also getting its products done by the use of child labor, but you are against the child labor, then again you would want to stop procuring this particular product from that country as well. So on one side we have the economics from the government perspective, we also have the consumer preferences as well. That is why the country of origin is very important when it comes to buying that particular product, or with respect to duties, restrictions and statistics, as we initially discussed with respect to the government as well. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about US Taliban deal and intra-Afghan talks. The entire analysis for this particular topic has been discussed on 13th of 2020. The link for the same will also be provided in our description box, so kindly look into it. What are we going to discuss in today's topic? That is with respect to how different countries have different perceptions as to how they have to employ their strategies when it comes to Afghanistan. We do not have a uniform pattern, but instead each country is looking for its own advantages, its own perspectives, and that is what is the focus of our discussion, because rest of the analysis has been discussed on 13th of September 2020, but our focus will be on independent strategies designed by individual countries. First, let's take the United States of America. What is the important objective of United States of America? The only thing that they want is a peaceful exit from Afghanistan. That is one perspective, because they have fought the longest war in Afghanistan. So what they want to do right now is to remove themselves from the Afghanistan peacefully. Another important perspective is United States of America is going into elections this November. Donald Trump also wants to make sure that he is established peace in Afghanistan. He wants to speak about it in the elections, and that is another reason why United States of America is withdrawing from Afghanistan. One is because they have fought the longest war, and the other is because of the elections. Now let's focus on the European Union. In the past, from 2002 up until 2018, the European Union had nearly provided 4 billion euros. Why? Because they wanted to make sure that there is peace and tranquility in Afghanistan, there is stability and democracy that is established in Afghanistan. This might create sustainable growth and it might also provide jobs. That was the intention of the European Union. And now it says in case it has to continue giving money to Afghanistan, there has to be a prevalence of the security environment, and at the same time human rights will also have to be established with the intra-Afghan talks, says the European Union. What is the viewpoint of China? According to China, Afghanistan is home to Taliban and a number of transnational terrorist outfits. What is this transnational terrorist outfits? They are not only restricted to the state of Afghanistan, but they can also enter another country as well. How? Afghanistan can be used as a launchpad to enter the sensitive region of Xinjiang in China. So according to China, there are number of terrorist organizations which can use Afghanistan as a launchpad and enter the sensitive region of Xinjiang, which is currently in China. So according to China, Xinjiang is a breeding ground for terrorism, separatism as well as religious extremism. The minute they have some people, some terrorist organization giving them some encouragement, there could be peace and tranquility disturbed in the Xinjiang is the major concern for China. And at the same time, China is also looking at the BRI project, that is One Belt One Road initiative, and in case there are terrorist organizations that are launching from Afghanistan, they would not be able to conduct the economic activities in the country of Afghanistan and in the Central Asia as well. That is the major impediment for China. So what is China looking at? China is looking this particular country as a security threat. Why? Because the terrorist organization can use Afghanistan as a launchpad to strike at the heart of Xinjiang province. So what is it looking right now? It is seeking the support of the Pakistan. It is asking Pakistan to preserve its security and connectivity interests when it comes to China. This is what is the viewpoint of China. Now let's look at how Russia views Afghanistan when it comes to the security issue. What we have is the Afghanistan, and from Afghanistan we would be able to connect to Central Asia, and from Central Asia we would be able to connect to Russia as well. So the major issue for Russia is with respect to the drug cartel. Why? Because what is being promoted across the borders of Afghanistan is narco terrorism. So since narco terrorism is across the northern boundaries of Afghanistan, this may go to Central Asia as well, and from Central Asia it may move to Russia as well. So the narco terrorism or drugs is the major issue for Russia. So Russia views the narco terrorism as the major problem from Afghanistan, which can ultimately end up in Russia. So it is looking at drug issue and also extremist group which can hit its Chechnya province as well. So these are the different perspectives for each of these countries. So what we have is not a single objective of establishing peace and tranquility in Afghanistan, but each individual country has its own perspective, has its own modus operandi when it comes to Afghanistan. Had it been a uniform entity, uniform objective, then all could have come in, stepped up their apparatus and ensured that there is peace and no spillover effects into their country. But now what we have is different perspective, different dimensions, different objectives and strategies, and as a result there could be a provision that terrorist activities may continue, says the author of this article. So what should we do in the near future? So what we require is a regional consensus where all these countries come together. They have one uniform protocol, or they might bring up an objective criterion to understand, analyze and make sure that terrorism does not exploit these important loopholes and will bring an issue to all these countries. So what we require is the vacuum that is created by the United States of America's withdrawal will have to be managed by a like-minded forces coming together, having an objective criterion, and that is what is going to serve Afghanistan, says the author of this article. But kindly remember, for the rest of the analysis, kindly look into our 13th September 2020's video, whose link will also be provided in our description box. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about new Prime Minister of Japan, that is Mr. Shugo. Shugo happened to be a very close to Shinzo Abe as well. So he was considered the right hand man of Shinzo Abe, and it is also said that he would follow and implement all the policies both on the domestic level and also on the international front as followed by Shinzo Abe. This is one perception. There is another perception as well. It is also said that he may take a slightly more moderate approach to China. In case that does really happen, then that would be a major problem to India. So what India is looking at right now? India is looking that all the policies, the programs and schemes taken by Shinzo Abe on the foreign level will have to be implemented and has to be continued by Shugo. In case he gets close to China, that will be a major issue according to India. So that will be watched closely by India as well, and he has taken as the Prime Minister when the global community is witnessing some of the graver issues. One is with respect to the COVID-19 and at the same time the aggression of China as well. So he has to deal with both issues, how he'll be able to resolve the COVID-19 issue and the aggression of China is what needs to be watched, says the author of this article. The author of this article further goes on to say that India and Japan have had a beautiful and fruitful relationship in the past. That is also because of the bonhomie between Shinzo Abe and Prime Minister Modi. Hope the same continues. India and Japan relations continue and prosper, and at the same time India will have to watch closely with respect to PM Suga, says the author of this article. There is not much about it, but we will have an elaborate analysis once we have more updates with respect to India and Japan. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. With reference to Vaibhav initiative, which of the following statements is or correct? It is a program pioneered by the Department of Science and Technology for nurturing ideas and innovations into successful startups. Its focus is on development of new vaccines and medical devices. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is none. Why? Because both the statements are wrong here. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, the Vaibhav initiative aims to bring out the comprehensive roadmap to leverage the expertise and knowledge of global Indian researchers for solving emerging challenges. And the key areas of discussion will include quantum technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, electronics and semiconductor technologies, communication technologies, photonics, computational and data sciences, aerospace technology, among others. So what is this Vaibhav initiative? Basically, you have NRIs who are settled in different countries or Indians who are settled in different countries. So making use of their knowledge such that we would be able to advance our technological progress with respect to all these sectors is what is called as the Vaibhav initiative. So what is this Vaibhav initiative? It is a program where the government is intending to create an ecosystem of innovation. How? By reaching to the Indians all over the globe. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. India is the world's largest cultivator of bamboo. International Network for Bamboo and Rattan is headquartered in Beijing. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. Why? Because India is not the world's largest cultivator. Instead, it is the second largest cultivator. The first is China. And with respect to the International Bamboo and Rattan Organization, yes, it is headquartered in Beijing in China. And with respect to the organization, it is an intergovernmental developmental organization that promotes environmentally sustainable development using bamboo as well as rattan. Membership of IMBAR is open to member states of United Nations and also to the intergovernmental organizations. Why have we selected this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, September 18th happens to be the World Bamboo Day, which is celebrated by the World Bamboo Organization. Why? Because they want to create awareness about conserving and promoting the bamboo industry. And at the same time, we also have to remember this key important fact when it comes to the bamboo production. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements is or correct about Nandakannan Zoological Park? It is located in Bhubaneswar in Odisha. Nandakannan is the first zoo in the world to breed white tiger and melanistic tiger. Nandakannan is the only zoological park in India to become an institutional member of World Association of Zoos and Aquarium. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, it is located in Bhubaneswar in Odisha. It is the first zoo in world to breed white tiger as well as melanistic tiger. So what is this melanistic tiger? It means there is increased development of melanin pigment, and as a result there is black stripes on that tiger. That is called as the melanistic tiger. Nandakannan is the only conservation breeding center of Indian pangolins in the world. Nandakannan is the only zoo in India after which an express train, Puri New Delhi Express, has been named as Nandakannan Express, and Nandakannan is the only zoological park in India to become an institutional member of World Association of Zoos and Aquarium. Kindly remember these facts. It can be very important for your preliminary examination. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Stand Up India scheme, which of the following statements is correct? Its purpose is to promote entrepreneurship among SC/ST and women entrepreneurs, provides for refinance through the SIDBI. Select the correct answer using the code given below. The answer to this is both 1 and 2. Both the statements are correct with respect to Stand Up India scheme. Now let's look into the mains practice question. Massive online education without improving access to resources and addressing the access gap may deepen the already existing socio-economic disparities in education. Discuss. What do you understand by country of origin in economics? How does its enforcement help the economy? Please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review, come up with constructive criticism. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.